Welcome back to the Papa Meat channel. How you doing? Come on and sit on down because today we're diving back into the world of cults. Now, the last cult that we covered on this channel was the Yellow Deli cult. Sure, there was one here. I was a bit too scared. I think I even went outside of one and we were going to do something with it, but just creepy, dude. I don't know. You get a weird sense for cults and you're somewhere that you shouldn't be. That's what it felt like. To be fair, though, the food did look delicious. So I just want to say, if you're going to join a cult, maybe join that one because you'll be eating good. All right. But I just want to preface by saying I love talking about cults. It's one of the most horrifying things ever. People psychologically breaking you down to make you think in a hive mind, feel like you need each other, and the cult itself becomes a backbone for your own pillar to live. And I love talking about cults like the one we're talking about today, because I can guarantee you, maybe not everyone, but I guarantee you a lot of people have already seen this cult. What, Hunter? What are you talking about, Scientology? No, dude. We're talking a little more eccentric. It's a little more foreign. I'm of course talking about Shin Yun, which maybe that didn't shock you. It should have. Today we're talking about Shin Yun, the classical Chinese dance show that you've probably seen advertised on basically any flat surface on the planet that exists. I mean, we're talking about, you've probably seen a billboard of this. I'm from Kansas City. There's been a Shin Yun billboard in our city for years, like so long, to the point where you're just like, well, you don't really even think about it, but you're just kind of like, why is there a Chinese dance show perpetually happening in Kansas City? You know, maybe if you're on the coast, right, where there's a bit more diversity, but if you're on some of these flyover states, how is that not raised any red flags or something? Or, you know, people aren't just curious. The show may seem like an innocent performance, embracing and celebrating Chinese traditions, but underneath lies a demented cult involved in much more sinister practices. The cult today is Shin Yun, which is basically a cult that is disguised as a fun dance group. It's like a NSYNC meets Chinese cult. That's what Shin Yun is. But before we dive too much into it, what is Shin Yun? Where did it start? Shin Yun is a large-scale production put on by Shin Yun Performing Arts, which presents a family-friendly show consisting of traditional Chinese dancing, acrobatics, and tumbling, all accompanied by a live orchestra. The show itself has around 480 performers in it, each dressed in extravagant traditional Chinese costumes. I mean, they're putting on the Nutcracker every night. If the crime was putting on a good show, they'd be locked away a long time ago, all right? Me and pageantry, Chinese pageantry at that. I'm surprised I haven't been there myself, Nick.
They're coming?
They're always here. I don't know how.
Are they?
They're almost always here. Maybe not always here, but I mean, every once in a while, you're like, here's that goddamn billboard again. Some Chinese dude on a billboard just like... Chinese woman wrapped up in silk cloths and but the show has become massively successful over the years, to the point where they now have multiple troupes that simultaneously tour the world to perform. I mean, they're on competition with Circus du Soleil. Which one's bigger? I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Blue Man Group.
I feel like Shin Yun just would curb stomp the shit out of the Blue Man Group. At this point in time,
Do you think the original Blue Men are dead?
I think the original Blue Men are dead. Yeah. I think like some kind of alien life form, they weren't meant to last long. I would imagine that every Blue Man that you see on stage is 8 years old, but they live till 16. And that's when
They're middle-aged when they're dancing.
Yeah. Through their network of volunteers, they have been able to advertise the show while hardly dipping into their own funds. Nonprofit groups linked to Shin Yun spent $18.5 million in advertising in 2017 alone. Almost $20 million that Shin Yun did not pay for, but people were just like, people have got to see this thing. The sweet smell of cult is already starting to waft into the air, dude. Most people have been bombarded by Shin Yun ads everywhere you go, on billboards, flyers, TV commercials, posters, and more. And in fact, the advertising is so over the top that it's become an online meme. What do they always dance like jumping for? Kind of a bit creepy though on the bottom of this thing. That's just like all of them are in unison, and there's just like one giant Chinese woman jumping over them, like a titan or something like that. Things get a little strange as the marketing ramps up for the year, and it gives you a little insight into just how obsessed some people are with Shin Yun, which is a post here saying, "Lady comes into our store every year asking us to put the posters up. This year, the lady wouldn't leave until I put the poster in our window. Just stood there watching me, pointing at our display window." Yeah, like much creepier that'd be too if she was just like doing a backflip every once in a while. She has some like, long silk dress on. She kept doing backflips and she's just like... Shin Yun has a YouTube channel where they upload interviews with audience members exiting the show, often with people explaining how they believe the show is divine, with some being reduced to tears.
God, I need to see this show.
I do too, man. There might be a world where I go up and I'm like watching some Chinese pageantry and I just start weeping. Maybe it's because I'm afraid. No. Stop flipping.
Picture this. You're home alone when suddenly the worst happens. You have no one to run to, No one to yell to. You're all alone. This could have been easily avoided with the Meat Canyon Patreon, where you get behind-the-scenes perks, monthly stickers, and support one of YouTube's most beloved channels.
Should have signed up to the Patreon.
Please, for your own safety, consider signing up to the Meat Canyon Patreon.
To understand how Shin Yun has garnered its reputation of being a cult, we have to go back to before its creation. It all starts with a man from China named Li Hongzhi, because in 1992, Li Hongzhi created a spiritual movement that involved a collection of Tai Chi style stretches and exercises. By doing so, alongside special breathing exercises, he promised great improvements to health as well as spiritual well-being.
We can't show that image because even though that's not the sign,
Let's just say it's a reverse. It's one of those funny symbols that looks like a ninja star, but it's reversed. It's Buddhist though, right?
yeah, it's a Buddhist.
It's a Buddhist symbol.
But this is the sign that looks like what Elon Musk would put on his Twitter profile.
Elon Musk would really grab his heart and say, thank you, people. We appreciate you. It's that Buddhist symbol. The Chinese government was against the formation of a religious teaching that has strayed from the control of the Chinese Communist Party, dude. My boy Xi Jinping does not like it when people are like, you know what, dude? Maybe communism isn't cool, dude. He's just like, you know, that teddy bear looking ass is just like, get them out. Get them out. His big pot of honey. They were shocked to find that large groups of people were gathering in the park to perform these exercises and feared that they could become a serious threat, especially because some of the members included high-ranking members from the Communist Party. So he's sitting there and he's just like, okay, dude, this isn't just yoga anymore. What the hell is this? There's some of my boys down there. So Xi Jinping was saying, some of my boys are down there, dude. And they're just like totally doing the splits, groin completely torn open. Do you think Jinping, do you think he's, or is it Xi Ping? Xi?
Z.
Xping. Do you think ZP, whenever he's like really concocting acts of terror, do you think he's sitting there? Because I feel like a lot of people smoke cigarettes in movies, right? Can you imagine him opening up a ceramic jar of honey? And being like, sticky fingers. Their exact number at this time is hard to pinpoint. They claim that they had 70 to 100 million practitioners by 1999. I find that a little hard to believe, Nick. But the Falun Gong may be exaggerating their influence. Chinese authorities claim it's as little as 2 to 3 million, but they also are suspected of downplaying its influence to make the movement seem less like a threat. So now you have basically communist police being like, dude, 2 to 3 million tops, for real. And then you have the Gulong Fong or whatever. They're just like, nah, bro, we have 80 million red-blooded, non-communist Marines that are stretching and farting and doing breathing exercises. Also, I don't think we've really prefaced that it's like, man, it just seems like a yoga group right now. It doesn't really feel like a cult, does it?
So far.
People who are watching this video are probably like, how the fuck is this a cult? We're getting there. Worried that this movement overshadowed the CCP, they began a propaganda campaign that demonized Falun Gong and claimed that they were an evil cult. Not only was this sentiment spread through television and radio, but it was even regurgitated in schools.
Gotta start them young.
Lee's book about his teachings were banned, and he ended up fleeing the country, likely fearing persecution. He moved to the United States and became a permanent resident as of 1998. At one point, a cult activist who protested a Slanders magazine cover denouncing the Falun Gong was supposedly beaten and arrested. This triggered a large-scale response. Before the legislature could meet to discuss a harsher crackdown on the Falun Gong, thousands of Falun Gong members gathered near Tiananmen Square to demand that their organization gain official status. The CCP, however, deemed it as superstition rather than religion. What started as a peaceful protest soon turned violent when members began huddling together to avoid being forcefully moved out of the way. People were beaten, and some women were dragged away by their hair with blood pouring from their head. In the end, more than 3,000 followers were arrested. Falun Gong was now a banned practice. The Chinese government didn't stop there. In fact, they ramped up their efforts by creating the 610 Office, a security agency whose sole purpose was to collect intel on the Falun Gong while continuing to spread propaganda. Physical objects pertaining to teachings were being confiscated and destroyed. Over time, more and more practitioners of Falun Gong were caught and given prison sentences. Reportedly, thousands were forced into mental hospitals, and others were moved into re-education camps.
Jesus.
God damn, over stretching and breathing? I'm still trying to figure out if this is a cult or not, Nick. I'm on the fence about going to the show now. I'm like, these motherfuckers got kicked out of China for breathing and stretching.
Well, that's the thing. Come on, man. It's China.
Listen, It's China. Other reports claim that practitioners of Falun Gong were detained and tortured. Some were beaten with electric shock batons, and others were forced to wear Di Lao. This is a complex series of shackles that attach to the victim's hands and feet, preventing them from walking, sitting, or standing up straight, which they would wear for grueling lengths of time. According to Amnesty International, hundreds of Falun Gong members who were mistreated or tortured were killed. While their deaths were reported as suicides, it was noted that the bodies were cremated too quick for anyone to properly assess the cause of death. All right, that guy took his own life. Throw him in the furnace! Wait, get him in there! I feel bad for him. Can I not feel bad for him?
They seem like, so far, nothing.
Nothing! But this is where things get a little strange. If Chinamen getting beaten, dragged through the streets, it wasn't strange. In 1999, when Li Hongzhi, who was the guy who started this, was living in America, he was interviewed by the Time magazine. In it, we start to see the more bizarre and mysterious side of the religion's creator. Early on in the formation of Falun Gong, it appeared that the exercises and meditation used to harness one's chi was intended for more than just physical health and spiritual growth. Li Hongzhi promised that these teachings could lead to enlightenment, which in turn unlocked supernatural powers.
Ooh.
Bunch of goddamn Chinese superheroes running around, right? These powers included seeing through objects, removing facial wrinkles, levitation, restoring the menstrual cycles of women after menopause, and the ability to cure any illness. This is basically a gender-swapped Jesus person who's just like, fuck it, you're fertile again. You can have kids whenever you want. It almost seems like he's prying on older people, which is very cult-like too. Very like Jonestown-y, right? You get all the old people together and you're just like, we can remove those wrinkles. You can have kids again. You can cure sickness, which also could be like, oh, my husband or my wife is sick. I could cure them, you know, whatever. Very manipulative is what it is.
My friend he was in a pyramid scheme thing, and he bought a drink that he swears to God cured his grandma of her illnesses. He was trying to get me to join it. I was like, no, dude, I don't want to join. He's like, I swear this product works. My grandma was sick. She was dying. She started drinking this, and she's healthy now. All her ailments are gone off an energy drink.
He's like, it's called 5-hour energy. In this Time magazine, Time posed this question. They said, have you seen human beings levitate off the ground? Right? Because they're like, yeah, I heard you guys were prosecuted. He's just like, I can give you magical powers. You can fly. And they're like, okay, so this is taking a direction. Have you seen human beings levitate off the ground? Lee responded, I have known too many. It's like, we actually got to stop. So we got to ease up on the amount of powers given off. People are goddamn flying squirrels all around these places. Can you describe any that you have known? And then Lee's first response, David Copperfield. He can levitate, and he did it during performances.
So he's a bit delusional. He thinks David Copperfield is real.
Lee, my boy Lee, the creator of Shin Yun, he looked at the Vegas magician David Copperfield and is using that as an example of a person having superpowers. These people exist. They are out there, dude. You know, there's probably still people that see these shows at Vegas and they're like, oh, Shin Yun, Shin Yun. He states that the goal of their religion is to complete their cultivation in order to free themselves from the worldly state and understand the truth of human life. With enough mental and physical exercise, one can, quote, achieve a divine status. So he's saying that we're going to get so fit that we can fly. We're going to be so in control of our bodies, breathing, stretching, everything. You're going to be able to Jesus touch someone and heal them. He discusses his belief that society currently has poor moral value and that this is mainly due to the lack of orthodox religious practices. He believes the other reason is that, quote, since the beginning of the century, aliens have begun to invade the human mind and its ideology and culture. See, that's the thing about Lee. He says it just like, we got to get in shape, man. The moral fabric of this country just seems a bit off. I feel like people aren't, you know, they're not taking care of themselves. And you're like, that's true. And he's just like, aliens are also coming and they're with our minds. And like, we're dead. We're dying inside. You're technically dead. And you're like, you know, you might be able to do the full splits, but now, you know, at what point do you start getting bought into that too? To me, if you're able to teach someone who's never done a backflip before how to do a backfllip, or to stretch all the way, stretch their legs out, splits, I feel like you're going to be able to talk that guy into anything.
I feel like once you cure my diseases, I will believe anything.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just saying that people want to latch on to anything to believe in. Lee believes that aliens from another dimension have been walking among humans and corrupting them by introducing them to modern scientific inventions. He believes that aliens want to find a way to clone human beings because our bodies are, quote, the most perfect form in the universe. Once they have done so, they will fully invade Earth. This is an interesting turn. What I like about Lee is that he's like taking a bit of Christianity and then he's taking some Scientology in there too, and he's just spicing that up. He's sitting there and he's just like, I don't know, dude, aliens want us to take over. We're gonna fully take over, and we have to deny them our bodies, right? By stretching and breathing, and probably by donating to Shin Yun to keep the cause going. Which Time Magazine, he's saying this all the time. We're still not out of the Time Magazine, all right? And Time Magazine says, what do aliens look like? Lee says, some look similar to human beings. U.S. technology has already detected some aliens. The difference between aliens can be quite enormous. Can you describe it? You don't want to have that kind of thought in your mind. I'm kind of trying to do a Chinese accent just a little bit, but I'm not trying to go overboard with it. I love Time's response. Describe them anyway.
Yeah, please.
One type looks like a human, but has a nose that is made up of bone. Others look like ghosts. At first they thought I was trying to help them. Now they know that I'm sweeping them away. And in the year 2000, Falun Gong created the Epoch Times, which is now one of the most influential far-right conservative news organizations. While representatives deny their affiliation, it is clear that the articles are very generous towards Shin Yun. They're like, we don't even know that stuff. I don't even know what that is. And you like turn the page, whatever. And this is a giant Shin Yun like... Shin Yun theatergoer. All art is ultimately for God. Theatergoer feels Shin Yun's quest for peace. Shin Yun's music, a great gift for humanity. These are haunting. These look like church pictures too. Finally, we can get into Shin Yun being born into the world. Falun Gong believed that the sympathy people had for their harsh persecution in China began to die down over time. Because of this, their focus moved to using a form of entertainment to push their beliefs rather than endless protests. So they're just like, dude, people don't give a f that we were booted out of China. So how are we gonna win him back? And one guy's like, song and dance? He's like, yes. One day, he heard some artistically gifted disciplines trying to create a performance to push the teachings of Falun Gong and subsequently, quote, save sentient beings. They're like, we gotta get Shin Yun out there and also save all of human life against aliens. And they're like... Lee's just like, oh, I like you. Lee felt that a performance with such a lofty goal needed to be the highest quality possible. Thus, he sank all his effort into what was known as Shin Yun, which debuted 6 years later in 2006. Motherfucker spent a half a decade crafting the greatest show on earth. All about him being like wrongfully kicked out of China. He's like, everybody will dance and cry. Shin Yun is not known to be subtle in its messaging. After all, the tagline for the show is China before communism. In America, that's gotta kill. It makes me think more of like, of course it's in the Midwest because people are just like, communism? What the f are you talking about? It's just like China before communism. Like, well, yeah, what the f was that magical place like before they ruined it? It is a blatant propaganda piece denouncing the Chinese Communist Party, instilling their religious beliefs and pushing traditional Chinese values, paired alongside skilled dance routines and acrobatics. All right. So yeah, they're getting some messaging in there, but you're going to be like, well, god damn, that's like pretty impressive. According to a reporter, one scene from the show depicts a group of students meditating as they read Falun Gong's books, only to be ruthlessly clubbed by evil communists. One of them starts beating an injured victim to death as his friend tries to pull him to safety, but stops when he is suddenly so moved by the victim's kindness that he instantly reforms his communist ways and begins to dance.
I like that message.
I don't think it's bad. Really the only thing so far, if it was that you didn't have the alien stuff and like, you know, make your wrinkles go away, I feel like it all would be fine. What him sitting there and he's just like, my friend, if you must kill me, fine. And the guy like is like, f communism, and he starts like twerking or whatever on stage. That's fine to me. Why not?
Because they're just depicting their protest.
They're predicting their experience. But like this is in a way, artistically, I'm showing you what happened to me. Their song and dance, right? I think that's fine. But then China responds to Shin Yun. China kind of figures out what the f they're doing, and they're pissed. Shin Yun was a massive success, which angered the Chinese government. China at first was like, it's going to fail. No one cares. And then when they figured out that like, oh no, this thing's crushing, dude. They're like, what? No! They wanted to stifle its message by any means necessary and ban the production company from ever performing in China. Who cared? Do you think we want to come back? The show's about you kicking us out, dude. Stories from Shin Yun performers began to come out, wherein Chinese embassies were threatening to cut ties with advertisers and media partners if they allowed them to perform. This extended to harassing the families of performers, hacking their website, and finding any way they could to sabotage their traveling tour buses. It became incredibly common for production buses to have their tires slashed, specifically in ways that would lead to the tires exploding at high speeds, presumably to have them pop while on the road to cause accidents. A very calculated, pretty evil thing to do, if I'm being honest. This would happen all across the country, and it was suspected that the CCP agents were following them to thwart their ability to reach the venues on their tours. This escalated to bomb threats, mass shooting threats, and threats of taunts against the performers.
Jesus Christ.
One of these threatening emails translated from Chinese to English reads like this. This is one of the threatening emails from China. I have made a large number of incendiary bombs using alcohol and glass bottles. On the first day of the Chinese New Year, we will secretly go to Dragon Springs Temple, which is home of the Shinyu's headquarters and training facility, and I will set fire to the surrounding vehicles, then hack and kill the guards, break into Dragon Springs Temple, and throw gasoline bombs at the wooden buildings! Exclamation point. Slash and kill everyone we can see! Exclamation point. At the same time, our people will attack congressmen who support Falun Gong.
Okay.
Awkward. Turtle? While the Falun Gong seems to have faced unfair persecution throughout its long history, they are still guilty of absolutely horrendous things. I feel like we focused on a lot of the positives for the majority of this video. But apparently there is some more stuff, which, you know, in 2024, the New York Times released a nuclear expose that unveiled how cult-like the Falun Gong really is. Similar to most cults, they have their own scheduled living area, in this case, a 400-acre compound in New York City named Dragon Springs. They have to be there.
They're providing free housing.
They're providing free housing in New York during these difficult times, but you do have to be there. That's a little dicey. Here, the performers live and train under abusive conditions. Former dancers explain that they were constantly pushed to their mental and physical limits, sometimes working 15 hours a day. And let me remind you, it's a cult, so there's no pay. Zero pay. 15 hours of physical training every day to be the greatest show on earth. Do we want to be special or not?
It's like the Yellow Deli.
If there's cult in business, you're not getting paid, dude. You might get a sandwich for free. You might be able to twerk and do the splits, but that's going to be about it. Because performers were given free housing and food, they felt indebted to the Shinyun staff and thus not deserving of pay. However, if a member decided they wanted to leave, they were then told that they would have to repay the cost of tuition, which exceeded $200,000. See, that's the part where it's very cult-like, where it's just like you're indebted to them. And then also it feels like you can't leave. You're like, I'm just going to be in debt for the rest of my life. What the f is this? As horrible as these conditions were, the performers had drunk the Falun Gong Kool-Aid, believing that they needed to give a flawless performance because Shinyun and its teachings would save the audience from the impending apocalypse. Don't forget about the alien stuff we said. We're talking a lot about the Chinese government stuff. They still thought that the alien invasion's happening, all right? That's still very much a threat. A former dancer named Mr. Sun used to only sleep 5 hours a night, working himself to the bone to perfect his routine despite having a sprained ankle. He told a New York Times reporter this, quote, "It's actually the mental trauma that still affects me until today. If you don't do it right, then it's on you. Then the universe is not saved because of you."
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, for a dance routine, dude. You don't do the dance routine right, and all of a sudden it's just like, you let the goddamn aliens in, Mr. Sun. He's just like... Similar to many cults, a fear of the outside world was instilled in those living in Dragon Springs. People would not be granted permission to visit their families often, pressured to live on the complex until adulthood. They're swooping them up as basically children, teenagers, children, whatever, not allowing them to see their family, and then they're basically indoctrinated into this like way of living, being completely also isolated from the family. So the Shinyun cult becomes their family. Those who decided to leave were convinced to stay over the threat that they would be going to hell otherwise. Did we mention aliens? Don't forget about hell. It's here too. Performers truly believed that Li Hongzhi was the only one that could protect them and thought that they were in grave danger if they left. One of the most alarming discoveries was that because Li's teaching claimed to heal any illness or wound, performers were rarely allowed to seek medical care for serious injuries. Even a performer who suffered a broken kneecap forced herself to rehearse through severe pain and fear of appearing unfaithful to their religious practices. See, now I'm conflicted, dude. Well, now I'm like, Xiping, I'm like, well, Xiping, good call. He said they're still... I got it right the first time. When Daisy Wong, a former dancer, sprained her ankle, Li Hongzhi simply told her, quote, "It's supposed to self-heal if you just send forth righteous thoughts." That's how they buy into. We'll teach you. Go to the class and we'll teach you.
You're not dancing hard enough.
You're not dancing hard enough. Stomp your ankles harder. A performer in the orchestra had once come to Li with serious shoulder pain, only for him to touch his head and shoulder briefly before telling him he was healed. Of course, this did nothing, and he dealt with the pain for years while his peers claimed he was simply not faithful enough to be healed. How fucked up is that psychologically? You would, I mean, like, every sense that you have, you would just believe that it's just a complete aberration, you know? Is that the right word? Aberration? He eventually left Shinyun to discover he had a bulging disc in his spine. Oh, that's what happens when you lack faith, dude. You get bulging discs. Many of the performers were young children, as young as 11 years old, who still had developing muscles and bones. The Shinyun production runners denied claims of withholding medical care, but there's no way that that many people would come forward for it to be a lie, you know? Performers would be berated for being too fat, to the point that instructors instructors would ask their peers to physically stop students from buying snacks. For one female student, this led to only allowing herself 1 meal per day for fear of being ridiculed. Starving yourself, that's fun.
Lizzo did this to her dancers.
Lizzo did this to her dancers, and now she's on Ozempic, and she looks great. You go, Lizzo. Wasn't the whole thing that she put a banana up her or something like that and wanted somebody to eat it? Performers as young as 16 years old began developing eating disorders from the intense pressure put on them to stay underweight. Mr. Lee was treated like the leader of a cult, worshipped by his followers. Performers were told to refer to him as Master, and they would celebrate him on his birthday as well as Father's Day by making him gifts. Healthy. Here you go, Master. Mr. Lee. While people felt sympathy for the Falun Gong early on due to the harsh treatment they received from the Chinese government, this expose revealed to the world that they truly were correct in calling them an evil cult. Which, here's the thing, Nick. This whole video, I feel like 80% of it I felt sympathy for the Falun Gong people. I'm just wondering if the success of the show exacerbated his beliefs and exacerbated his perceived power on this planet.
I mean, maybe he had righteous goals in the beginning, but I feel like you gotta have, like, a psychotic personality to want to lead a cult.
The back and forth of this video is that the Chinese Communist Party dragging people by the root of their hair, kicking people out for doing breathing exercises, and it could have been stuff too. Maybe there's some of the alien talk in there, some of the belief systems. That's fine. People being kicked out of the country for their beliefs is a bit crazy. I do have a deep sympathy for the people that had to endure that, but at the same time, it doesn't give you the right to manipulate people at such a young age as well into fear mongering like any other hurtful kind of religion. You know, I think that people should believe what they want to believe, but whenever you physically and mentally destroy someone, I think it's a dangerous, dangerous road to go down. A big thing to reiterate is that people in cults are not stupid. I would say a lot of the people, if not all the people in cults, are probably very helpful, smart, useful people that have been manipulated at a weird time in their life, or just whenever they were young enough to just be plucked up and put into this program. That's all they've ever known. You know, thank God that this expose kind of came out and that people can understand what more of these billboards are, which are just like giant propaganda machines to be like, look how cool this is. You want to be a part of the show? Isn't this great? It's just a false spectacle. So if you see a Shin Yun billboard, just know that there's a darker side to this dance and song, even though the Chinese women look beautiful and they're jumping around and doing the splits. Sure, it's fun. We're not saying the show isn't good. We're saying that the teachings behind it from Mr. Lee himself are a bit odd. Aliens, hellfire, godlike powers. Smells like a cult. So, without further ado, that's our video for today, the Shin Yun Chinese dancing cult. We were thinking about going to see it, but you can't record, and I don't want to have to sit through the Chinese anti-communism dance.
I'm still going.
You're gonna go? All right, I'll go. All right, we're going. We'll see it. We'll see you when we get back. Bye-bye.